Good evening and thank you for joining us for The Spotlight. I'm David Rose. And tonight, The Spotlight may sound like a broken record because in 2022, so many records have been broken. Record numbers of shootings, thefts, drugs, and deaths. And all this data is collected on crime dashboards. And like a car that's been long neglected, the warning lights on these dashboards have been flashing red for months. In Tacoma, the stat that stands out, homicides, 39 homicides as of December 4th and counting, making 2022 the deadliest year that Tacoma has had in 4 decades. Violence hit a new high in Seattle as well. The 10-year trend on shootings and shots fired there. 698 cases so far this year, and that's up from 282 in 2012, an increase of 144%. As for drugs, fentanyl has been flooding our streets, surging up from Mexico, which is now the #1 source of this deadly narcotic, overtaking China. U.S. law enforcement agencies confiscated more than 2,900 pounds of fentanyl at the southern border just last month, a new record. And that brought the total haul up to more than 45,000 pounds, up from just 5,800 pounds in 2018. So it should come as no surprise that U.S. fatalities from drug overdoses in 2021 were the highest ever, topping 107,000 lives lost. 2/3 of those deaths involved fentanyl. And everywhere, record numbers of motor vehicle thefts. From January through November of this year, more than 41,000 vehicles have been reported stolen statewide. Almost 1,000 in Snohomish County, which reversed 3 years of declines. More than 6,000 taken in Seattle and almost 5,000 stolen in Tacoma. Law enforcement has told The Spotlight repeatedly that crimes of almost every kind start with a stolen vehicle. So given the raging epidemic of these thefts, why would the Washington State Patrol take detectives away from the Puget Sound Auto Theft Task Force, who was helping so many victims? Those 3 detectives and a sergeant with the State Patrol have recovered 921 stolen vehicles worth $13.1 million and made 241 arrests. So their impact has been huge. So this decision seems to send a message that it is open season for car thieves. Here's AJ Janabel with this Spotlight exclusive.
This blue sedan looks like Annabelle Wally's car. It's even parked in the same spot as Annabelle's car. But this is not her car.
A complete violation. Felt very personal that someone came and stole our car off our own property out of our own driveway.
Liz Wally tells me someone stole her daughter's car Saturday night while the family was out of town. All week, she and her daughter searched for the car.
Parking lots to side streets. We've been keeping our eyes open everywhere.
On Thursday, the family tells me they found their car, just not the way they'd want to.
That picture is heartbreaking. I mean, we worked very hard for this car, for them to come and take it and total it.
That's where the Puget Sound Auto Theft Task Force comes in. The multi-agency unit goes after repeat car thieves. Unfortunately, at the end of the month, the task force is losing a lot of its resources.
The message it sends to the public and unfortunately, criminals are part of the public and the car thieves are part of the public is we've got limited resources and we've got significant responsibilities.
Washington State Patrol is stepping away from the task force entirely. 3 detectives are going to other offices and another is retiring. Those 4 detectives had a big impact on cracking down on car thefts. Washington State Patrol officials say the change is needed.
The determination is, as violent crimes are rising in other parts of our roadway service, we need to apply more resources to that.
A surprise to other law enforcement agencies who are on the Auto Theft Task Force, as the Spotlight's David Rose broke the news to Pierce County Sheriff's Department spokesperson Darren Moss.
I'm on an email chain right now with some of the top folks at the WSP about their decision perhaps to remove some of the detectives from the Auto Theft Task Force. Is Pierce County going to continue to be part of that task force no matter what happens, even if it's a smaller task force? And if so, why is that important to your department?
Right now, yes, we're going. Well, I don't know. I didn't know the state patrol was going to drop out, but
the Pierce County Sheriff's Department has 1 detective assigned to the task force. Moss tells the Spotlight the Auto Theft Task Force's work in the community is vital for going after criminals who might fall through the cracks.
We don't have enough people to follow up on property crimes. We have violent assaults and murders that we have to investigate that take priority over someone's car getting stolen. So having somebody or a whole unit to go after these guys that are stealing cars over and over again, the prolific car thieves, it's extremely beneficial.
The Wallies were also surprised to hear the news.
That makes no sense that they would be cutting the task force at the time when the crime is rising by the minute.
Liz Wally tells me, if anything, more resources should get added to the task force instead of the opposite. And the auto theft task force will lose these resources from Washington State Patrol on December 31st. Officials with Washington State Patrol tell us it is possible that at some point they may be able to provide resources back to the auto theft task force. However, there is no timeline for when or if that might happen. Reporting in Pierce County, I'm AJ Janavel for The Spotlight.
Well, hit and run deaths can be among the most difficult cases to solve. Again and again, a reward is offered for tips that lead to the driver's arrest. Since the 1970s, programs like Crime Stoppers have used cash to help crack unsolved cases. Sometimes, though, an anonymous tip just isn't enough to get an actual criminal charge filed. And such was the case recently in Seattle, solved after King County took the unprecedented step of ponying up some big-time reward money to help catch the suspect who killed a 63-year-old county employee who was just riding his bicycle. It's another story you'll see only on The Spotlight.
This picture right here, this was Mike's very first triathlon that he did in '92.
When I spoke with Michael Coleman's wife and daughter more than a year ago, they were staying hopeful that the hit-and-run driver who killed him earlier that spring would be caught.
There's nothing positive that can truly come out of this, but we can get a smidge or a sliver of justice and help kind of close the tragedy and just kind of put that chapter behind us a little bit.
Michael was riding his bike northbound on Seward Park Avenue South in Seattle on April 11, 2021, when this silver sedan driving southbound crossed over and hit him head on. A witness says the driver never stopped. Instead, the car accelerated and took off. Michael died at the hospital. For King County Councilmember Rod Dembowski, his colleague's death was personal.
He was, first of all, a talented public servant, and second of all, a super nice guy.
Michael worked as the deputy director of Boeing Field, King County International Airport, and was a county employee. As the months stretched on with no arrest, Dembowski sponsored an amendment in the budget to offer a $50,000 reward to help Seattle police crack the case and to send a message.
If you do this kind of thing, we are going to track you down, we're going to chase you down, we're going to hold you accountable.
Dory told me at the time that she was extremely grateful for the added incentive.
I'd give anything right now to have him caught. I really would.
The increased reward worked. Though detectives had figured out who owned the car, they couldn't find it. Then a tipster contacted Crime Stoppers and police with firsthand knowledge of the crime.
That person is a hero, a courageous hero who has brought forth the facts that were needed to bring charges against these assailants and to bring justice and some measure of relief to Mike's widow and daughter.
Detectives arrested 25-year-old Julian Hamilton in November. King County prosecutors have charged him with hit and run and vehicular homicide. According to court documents, Hamilton had allegedly been drinking in a local park before the crash. Afterwards, police say he got a friend to help him hide the car. 11 months after the hit and run, detectives finally found it in Tacoma. It had damage consistent with the crash and was partially stripped of parts, and police recovered evidence, including a hair in the smashed windshield. Seattle police and Dembowski say the suspect may never have been charged with the crime if not for the help of the tipster. The council member says that person, who will remain anonymous, is getting the reward.
It doesn't bring Michael back, unfortunately, but maybe some measure of justice can be done. And I think offering a significant reward like this sends a message that as governments, we're going to take these crimes seriously.
Meantime, deadly traffic crashes in Washington state have soared to a level we haven't seen in 25 years. The Washington Traffic Safety Commission just released the latest data, including impaired driving. The Spotlight's Frankie Thompson reports the troubling trend may result in a major overhaul to our state's drunk driving laws.
Of the 600 deadly crashes in Washington this year, data shows more than half of them involve drugs and alcohol.
We're seeing more more of the behaviors that have always posed a risk of fatal crashes, just the frequency and number increasing.
Just on November 7th, one person, who was the passenger in a car, was killed in Port Orchard. The driver arrested for suspicion of driving under the influence. Washington Traffic Safety Commission says the frequency of these unsafe driving behaviors have been surging since the pandemic.
I think, we all experience trauma through COVID and people react in different ways. So I think, generally we're more concerned about people's behavioral health that includes substance use. And we've seen those issues become more frequent and acute due to COVID, and that has an impact on how people drive.
State Senator John Levick, a former state trooper, says he remembers responding to calls like this and the devastating impacts for those involved. Levick says it's one of many reasons why he's proposing a bill to lower the legal blood alcohol level from 0.08 to 0.05. Utah was the first to initiate the rule in 2018. Levick says he hopes Washington is the second.
People took more responsibility because they knew they had a great chance of being stopped and arrested for drunk driving, and that's what I hope we can accomplish here. I'm not out to arrest more people. I'm out to make sure that people just don't drive when they are impaired. If
0.05 becomes the standard, a man weighing 150 pounds would be considered legally drunk after 2 drinks. A woman would be at 0.05 at about 1.5 drinks. But Levick says people don't have to wait for legislation to start practicing safe measures. Especially during the holidays, officials with the commission say have a plan to get home safely.
You can accompany a sober driver who will get you home safely. You can use rideshare or a taxi, or you can find another place to sleep until you're fit to drive.
Still ahead, one local business owner who tried to chase down the thief who stole his work van says it's time to rethink police reform.
It is time to stand up and make a fight out of it for our city. Let police officers do their jobs.
Over the last several months, we've heard a repeated refrain of frustration, prompted by skyrocketing crime rates. Mayors, county commissioners, sheriffs, all pleading with lawmakers to rewrite their reform of policing rules for Washington State. And the stats back them up. And while some crimes, for example in Pierce County, like mail theft and shoplifting, have dropped around 50%, recently Sergeant Darren Moss says they've seen massive increases in business burglaries, armed robberies, aggravated assaults, rape, and theft compared to the previous 5 years. There is some positive news. The jail booking restrictions that have been in place in Pierce County because of staffing have been lifted.
We're arresting more burglars this month, and they're actually going to jail. You're going to see a decrease in the amount of crimes that they can go out and commit because we know that these guys are committing these offenses over and over and over again.
While that may help, the chief of police in Gig Harbor feels even more needs to be done on a statewide level to get us off this crime-ridden merry-go-round. He talked with the Spotlight's Zach Anders.
Because it's scary for homeowners that live around here and just people walking up and down the street.
Gig Harbor is often one of the best communities to live in Washington, but some residents say they don't feel as safe with crime growing in their community.
Our yearly totals of motor vehicle thefts were once 3 or 4, not that many years ago. Now we're experiencing that every week.
The city's police chief, Kelly Busey, says he wants to fix it, but he's been handcuffed by the law.
I don't recognize the state of law enforcement sometimes right now. I can't believe that we're pulling people out of stolen cars and not taking them to jail. I can't believe that we're allowing drug offenders, waking people up from a fentanyl-induced sleep and sending them on their way.
Last year, when the legislature passed the so-called police pursuit law, House Bill 1054, it limited an officer's ability to pursue suspects based on the type of crime committed.
State law is very specific in the crimes that we can pursue a vehicle for. It's violent crimes, sex crimes, and in a limited instance if we suspect that the vehicle driver is impaired.
But not property crime. For example, last week early in the morning, thieves caught with a loaded up U-Haul. There wasn't much officers could do.
If there's no other vehicles on the road and we're fleeing the scene of a commercial burglary, we should be able to pursue that a little bit. That threat has to be there.
It's incidents like this that have longtime residents on edge.
The cops don't have the same power they used to have. I would think the police people, the department would want to have the same power they used to have.
A lot of officers are discouraged. They want to protect their communities. We want to protect Gig Harbor, make it the safe place that it has always been. But it's frustrating when we see criminals flaunting the laws, being able to drive away.
Lawmakers may have no choice but to take up revisions to the state's police pursuit policy, at least. That's because of one citizen action group. Let's Go Washington has been collecting signatures by the thousands across dozens of drop-off locations and in-person kiosks, like the one at the South Hill Mall. The Spotlight's Nia Wong talked with volunteers there who want to give authority back to police to chase down the suspects who steal your stuff.
As people check off their shopping list, there's another list some of them are checking. But at the very top of this list is the Police Pursuit Initiative.
It seems like the freeways and the roads are turning into a car race.
Which is why Steve Tucker says he added his signature at the Let's Go Washington kiosk. He supports I-1474, which calls for police to be able to pursue based on reasonable suspicion instead of just probable cause.
We have many policemen that support our police pursuit bill.
Sharon Hannick with Let's Go Washington is confident this petition will get a lot more support beyond law enforcement.
You really don't know until the final days, and they're just pouring in right now.
Hannick says this kiosk has been up since mid-November, just one of dozens of locations across the state where the group is trying to collect more than 400,000 signatures. The initiative is in response to police reform laws, which kicked in last year.
Police, open the door.
2 months ago, several sheriffs, police chiefs, and lawmakers put together this video calling out the 2021 changes. They believe these laws are connected to a rise in crime like auto thefts. The Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs says auto thefts have gone up 82% since this time last year. Washington State Representative Roger Goodman says there's been some success since the vehicle pursuit law was enacted in 2021.
In the last 15 months, there's been an 80% reduction in deaths on the roadways because of vehicle pursuits. So very often, innocent bystanders have been killed.
He says the issue of police pursuits is unresolved, but will be brought up in the upcoming legislative session.
It's going to be a difficult conversation, but there's a balance here. It's going to require getting everybody around the table, and that includes not just the police, but the community groups and others who are concerned about police pursuits.
Still ahead on the Spotlight, another citizen initiative, but this is the work of just one man, and he's not entirely happy about it.
Why am I doing the job for the Seattle Police Department?
The theme for the Spotlight this week is broken record, crime and policing, the problems over and over again. We're seeing record numbers of victims and not enough suspects going to jail. But there is one man in our community who is putting his money where his mouth is and refusing to let everybody just shrug their shoulders, realizing this is a community problem. Bill Cahill with Beacon Plumbing is here. And Bill, you and I met at a Crime Stoppers fundraiser years ago. You were supporting paying tipsters. You've been very involved in the community. How frustrated are you about this broken record of crime and policing that we're seeing?
Well, I'm frustrated in a lot of areas, Dave. This isn't the city I grew up in. The city I grew up in, we watched hydroplanes, we enjoyed our freedom and playing sports in the streets. You don't see it anymore. And we're still a great city. This is my home. This is where my 6 children live. This is where my 10 grandchildren live. I know this, so many people in the city of Seattle. I'm not going to move out of the city of Seattle. I love it here. It's home. Always has been and always will be. But we need to make some changes. And the police officers, I had a vehicle that was stolen, and I went after the fellow that stole it, and I saw a police officer from the city of Seattle and said, "Would you please help me to get my truck back?" And he says, "I have to stand down. We can't get in a high-speed chase." Well, I was in that high-speed chase. Why am I doing the job for the Seattle Police Department? And I love the police department, don't get me wrong. We need police officers escorting women and children in the crosswalks to school. We need to have that dialogue in the community. We need our police officers. We don't need them to go to Florida. We don't need them to move out of state because they're going to get a better way of life. We need to take care of our police officers right here. But our local city council, our government here in Washington State needs to go against the grain because these people have been told stand down. And I think we've had enough of it. It's time to stand up and make a fight out of it for our city. Let police officers do their jobs.
There's so many viewers on the Spotlight, the show that you sponsor, and we're so grateful for you to do that are frustrated like you are and want a change. Recently, we're up on Aurora Avenue and we're seeing the prostitution that's just rampant. Many of those women are victims. One of them recently tried to escape and the guy attacked her, and the guy ended up getting a shootout with a Good Samaritan who tried to save her. Sex trafficking is a huge problem. It impacts everybody, but it's also sometimes a problem that's hard to get their arms around. You are a big supporter of trying to help these women and catch these abusers. Why is that so important to you?
These women have to have an alternative choice. They need to turn in the pimps, the people that have them prostituting for their own income. They need to turn them into the police department. Those people need to go to jail. And the women need to be offered work and assistance. They need to be placed in a place where they can go to work and make an honest living. And there's enough good business owners in this city. There's a lot of them that would help these women out.
Mr. Cahill, you and Beacon Plumbing, your company, have been very involved in trying to make things better in our community. What's your call to action for other business owners and people?
Get involved. Take an interest. Take an interest. Fund the police. Take an interest in the elections. Look at who we're voting for. Let's make decisions that are good decisions for our community, for doing the right thing, and for getting our police back to work number one. Get them out there.
We got a lot of problems in this community, but it's people like you that are standing up, that are making a difference. Thank you, Mr. Cahill, for your sponsorship.
Thank you, Dave.
You bet, you bet. Together, maybe we can all make a difference.
We will.
Still ahead, another broken record, holiday edition. Why this time of year produces such horrible outcomes for so many. We round out our show tonight with one more broken record. It's the crime of domestic violence, and unfortunately, it's hit levels previously unimagined. This past February, the National Domestic Violence Hotline experienced the highest monthly contact volume in its 25-year history. And here's another statistic to throw at you. In King County, 20% of all cases filed on average every month are domestic violence related. Earlier this month, a $2.5 million bail was set for a man accused of killing his girlfriend near Lacey. Marquand Bryant was charged with murder for shooting Rayanne Perez. Now the mothers of the victim are sharing their grief with the Spotlight. Once again, here's Nia Wong.
It was snowing, and she sent me a heart and said she'd see me in the morning.
Marty Aris never imagined that would be the last message she'd ever get from her daughter, Rayanne Perez.
I don't even know how to breathe without her. She was my everything.
The 21-year-old woman was found dead in an apartment near Lacey early Monday morning. The man accused of killing her is her boyfriend, Marquand Bryant. He faces 1 count of murder in the 2nd degree while armed with a firearm, as well as notice of domestic violence allegation with an intimate partner. Rayanne had only been dating Bryant for several months, according to her mothers, Robbie and Marty.
I just think about everything, and I wish I could have saved her. I wish I would have seen the signs, or she would have just came to me.
Signs of domestic violence can sometimes be hard to spot. Carrie Whitaker of the Jubilee Women's Center says some women don't even realize they or their loved ones are facing domestic violence. Her best piece of advice:
even if you're questioning it, even if you're considering, is this abuse or not, I'm just not feeling safe in my environment, or I don't think my daughter's safe or my friend is safe, call a helpline.
Domestic violence increases during the holidays, and for the Jubilee Women's Center, Coley Witness says they see more women needing help right after Thanksgiving.
We do get some phone calls, a lot of emails. We even get people coming to the door directly asking for applications.
The Jubilee Women's Center offers transitional housing, clothing, and more help for women trying to escape domestic violence. But for victims needing immediate assistance, Carrie Whitaker says to get out now.
If you're fearful for your physical safety or the safety of your children, leave.
Unfortunately, it was too late for Rayanne.
What he did to her was brutal and awful, and he took her from so many people that loved her so much.
Rayanne not only leaves behind her 2 grieving mothers, friends, and Nisqually tribe, but her daughter, Zayla Ray, just 17 months old.
She just wanted to make her daughter happy. That's all she ever wanted, was to be a good mom to her baby.
Well, that's all the time we have tonight on The Spotlight. Until next week, be smart and Stay safe.